The history of the 87th Fighter Interceptor Squadron starts on August 18, 1917, with the 87th Aero Squadron. It was redesignated soon after to Squadron B at Park Field on July 25th. It wasn't until almost 15 years later that the 87th Pursuit Squadron was constituted on February 19th of 1935, later consolidated with Squadron B Park Field on December 1st of 1936, then demobilized on the 1st of January in 1938. 4 years later, in 1942, it had a short life as the 87th Pursuit Squadron Interceptor at Dale Mabry Field in Florida, where it was soon redesignated as the 87th Fighter Squadron, flying P-40 Warhawks from Morris Field in North Carolina, and being used in the North African campaign during World War II. During the war in 1944, it was converted to P-47s and flew in the Italian peninsula. After the war ended, it was moved to Austria and deactivated in 1947 at Langley Field. During World War II, the 87th earned 10 campaign streamers and 2 unit citations. It wasn't until 1952 that the 87th was reactivated as a P-51 squadron in Sioux City, Iowa, and getting its first jets in 1953 with the F-86D Sabre. A year later, it was moved to England, where it was deactivated in 1955. 1 year later, the Aerospace Defense Command reactivated the 87th at Lockbourne, now Rickenbacker Air Force Base in Columbus, Ohio. At the time, it was flying the F-86D, and it was changed to the F-102 Delta Dagger. During its time in the ADC, it served on alert ready to intercept any threat. In 1960, the squadron was equipped with F-101s. On October 22, 1962, just before John F. Kennedy told the American public about the missiles in place in Cuba, the 87th had dispersed 1/3 of its planes, equipped with nuclear-tipped missiles, and had them stationed at Clinton County Air Force Base in southwest Ohio. They returned to Lockbourne after the Cuban Missile Crisis. The squadron was deactivated once more in 1968. This time, deactivation wouldn't last long. In October of 1969, the 11th FAS in Duluth, Minnesota was designated as the 87th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, and it was equipped with the signature F-106 it was known for during its time at KI Sawyer. During this time, the 87th was known for cold weather flying, and for its reputation for being the, quote, flyingest F-106 squadron in the Air Defense Command. Its time at Duluth was also when the 87th gained its signature Red Bulls insignia. The insignia was heavily inspired by the 11th FIS, who also had the Red Bull mascot, and Captain Dick Stultz, an F-106 pilot and artist, was tasked with creating a new insignia. There were changes made when the Air Force came back with its approved design, but in 1969, the 87th had its Red Bulls insignia adopted. In 1971, the 87th moved to KI Sawyer Air Force Base in Michigan. While at KI Sawyer, the 87th mission was to maintain all-weather readiness in its interceptor tactics, area refueling, and aerial combat. To be ready at a moment's notice, the 87th maintained at least 2 interceptors at all times, fully fueled and loaded, with pilots sleeping close by and ready to take the air in minutes. KI Sawyer's mission also saw KC-135s and B-52 ready to take the sky at a moment's notice. Scott Mills, a former crew chief of the 87th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, described what one of these alerts looked like.
Well, I remember in, I believe it was end of October, early November of '79, they had a false amber light. And that was a very sombering moment. All the pilots came running out at a moment's notice, and they were jumping in airplanes that weren't ready to fly at all. And if they could get them started, they were leaving. The alert birds took off right away, and we were scrambling to get jets off the ground, many of which shouldn't even have been started because they had parts missing, and it wouldn't have been pretty. But luckily, they realized after just a few minutes that this was a fault. It wasn't an actual amber light, and they all returned safely, and nobody was injured. But it was a damn scary moment.
During their time at KI Sawyer, the 87th also participated in William Tell weapons meets, which were the Air Force's biannual air-to-air weapons meets. These competitions were set to challenge interceptor squadrons in their capabilities in air-to-air interception and maintain readiness across the Air Force. While the 87th never did win any of these competitions, nor any of the Top Gun awards, the 87th does have the honor of being the only and last active-duty F-106 squadrons to participate in the William Tell competition in 1984. The 87th also maintained training aircraft, the T-33 Shooting Stars, for use as target aircraft in interception exercises, and also to evaluate and test radar and logistics for the North American Air Defense Command, or NORAD. In 1984, the 87th was set to convert to the F-15 Eagle, but before that was able to happen, it was deactivated in 1985. This would be the last time KI Sawyer would see a fighter interceptor squadron based at the installation. 5 years later, the 87th was reactivated as a flying training squadron and still flies today out of Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas, flying the T-38A Talon. I had the pleasure of speaking to First Lieutenant Manjafico, a training instructor there, who shared a bit about what the 87th does today.
So our mission is to take students who have finished flying from the T6 over to our side, and we're teaching them to fly a faster, kind of more dynamic jet and prepare them for future combat roles in fighter and bomber type aircraft. We fly roughly 60 lines a day. Most instructors fly twice a day here, so it's a lot of academics with the students. A lot of simulation with the students in our sims across the street, and then they get about 100 flying hours with us here. So we start with the contact phase. So we start with just how to land the airplane, how to fly the airplane with basic maneuvers. We move into formation from there, flying in two-ship formations, and then we go to the instrument phase. Once all that is kind of done towards the end of the program, we start introducing four-ship formations, low levels, and teaching them some kind of basic tactics and basic energy management stuff.
Lieutenant Montefico also shared what the future looks like for the 87th FTS.
The future 87th, right now we're still flying the T-38. UPT 2.5 is coming online, which is a little bit of a change for us, but it doesn't really change how we're going to teach and how we're going to complete the mission. In the future, the T7 is going to come online. So we'll replace our T-38 with the T7, but the mission of training pilots is not going to change for us.
I just want to say thank you to everyone involved in this project. The KI Sawyer Heritage Air Museum, Scott Mills, the 47th Flying Training Wing Public Affairs, Lieutenant Villarreal, and Lieutenant Montefico for their knowledge, insight, and help. I am so thankful I am able to share the history of the 87th with you, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more videos like it.
So a Red Bull is a most of all professional flyer. Everyone here does the best that they can every day. We put in tons of effort day in, day out to get these students trained. And whether it was, back in the day, flying interceptor jets to protect us against the Russians, or today training students, everyone is putting their full effort forward to get the mission done.